You're listening to the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by Quattro Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
All right, Real Estate Runway family, welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast. As always, I'm your host, Chad Sutton, and I'm joined today with a very special guest from Pantheon Investments, Mr. Dave Wolcott, who is the founder and CEO of Pantheon Investments, a firm specializing in providing busy professionals an opportunity to passively invest in top real estate assets, providing cash flow, tax benefits, and reliable alternative to the volatility of the stock market. Pantheon is currently an equity partner in over 2,100 doors across the U.S. with a combined value of over $360 million. I said million across the United States. Dave is also an author of The Holistic Wealth Strategy, Your Roadmap to Financial Freedom. You can get that anywhere books are sold, and I believe we'll even be providing a free link at the end, so stay tuned. Dave, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Chad, great to be here and connect.
Absolutely. Well, Dave, you know, that bio is a lot right there. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. I'd love to hear who you are, how you got into real estate and alternative investing. And let's hear who Dave Wolcott is real quick.
Yeah, absolutely, Chad. So I think like probably many of the listeners out there, right? I was raised in a middle-class family. I didn't know anything about investing and was just told basically to follow the conventional wisdom that was out there in the day, right? It's like, you've got to go to school, you've got to get good grades, and that's going to get you a job. You know, I can still remember my mother's voice drilling that into my head. And, I followed that path. So I went to George Washington University in DC and did the ROTC program into the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps was a phenomenal experience. And you got to learn a lot of other things that they don't really teach you right in the academic world, things like leadership, integrity, and teamwork, and really testing yourself, learning a lot about yourself. So that was a great experience. And then when I transitioned out, got into the corporate world and, completely lost that sense of mission, right? I just didn't feel that, we were following some corporate mission. There were a lot of managers instead of leaders in that type of environment. And at the time, I actually knew absolutely nothing about investing. And I, again, like many others, read that, little purple book. And for me, it was the Cash Flow Quadrant book. Right. And that was a big illumination to me. And really in the sense that it was all about freedom to me, investing in real estate. Right. That was something new. That was something kind of alternative and a path to freedom. But what resonated with me was really this path to freedom, and not only getting financial freedom, but really freedom of purpose to do what you want to do, freedom of relationship to work with who you want to work with, and freedom of location, right, to be working where you want to work. So that became really, interesting to me. And I became completely obsessed, I guess, over the past 20 years with, how to build wealth as an investor, looking at these alternative strategies around, alternative investments, private equity, and really positioning myself, in a manner that I'd be able to really, optimize this roadmap.
Y'all, Dave just said a tremendous amount right there, right? First thing, we are all kind of taught conventional wisdom because that's what the institutions and that's what the wealth managers, they want us to know, right? We're not taught some of these secrets that make the wealthy and why they stay that way and why they have ultimate freedom, right? He mentioned some purple books. That is the Rich Dad, Poor Dad series. They're probably the most popular wealth strategy books on the market today. There are many others. If you go to our website, you'll find a list of those. But the point is, Dave figured out freedom, right? There are 5 versions of that freedom he just outlined, talking about geographical, financial, freedom of relationship, right? I mean, just to name 3 of them. Dave has found a way to get there. And what I love about Pantheon Investments that is very similar to Quattro Capital, you guys are about alternative investing, right? Right now, real estate is the vehicle. It's not a one-trick pony. You are not a one-trick pony. Real estate is the vehicle. If real estate stops being the vehicle, groups like Pantheon and Quattro Capital, we will go and find the next vehicle, right? But the question is, what investments will provide you cash flow, tax benefits, good equity appreciation, so that you can go and enjoy those freedoms that we just talked about, right? So, wow, I had to just kind of hit on a couple of those things you said there, Dave. There's a lot of nuggets in that last conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Chad. So, I mean, this is probably a good segue, I guess, at that point to, I could probably talk about my book a little bit in the holistic wealth strategy. We really, and I kind of developed this as a way of really, trying to articulate, right, this vision of how to build wealth to my investors, right? And having, hundreds of different conversations, I thought maybe I should really instantiate this into, we have a really nice infographic that really kind of talks about the strategy. And ultimately, it's just around 4 simple steps, right? And the first step really includes setting your vision. If you don't have a vision and you set your target, you're going to miss every time. Right? It's very critical to know, where you want to go, where you want to be in the future, and also to be doing that, with your spouse or you have a family, so you're aligned on where you want to go. And then in the first pillar really of the strategy is to focus on your mindset. If you have limiting beliefs because of, your childhood or background or certain things, that are holding you back, you need to be able to move past those. You also need to be able to increase your IQ. And we like to talk about it in the sense of, not only financial IQ, but also mindset IQ and health IQ. It's like, I can't stress how important health is, right, in this journey of wealth, because you could have all the wealth in the world, but if you didn't have your health, right, where would you be? I mean, you would be nowhere. So health is very important. And also health gives you, that energy that you're looking for to, live your purpose and enjoy those freedoms, that we're really talking about. But a lot of it is mindset as well, and there's tons of, great resources on mindset. I think a lot of us have heard that, probably a lot of people on this podcast as well. But it is really a critically determining factor in terms of, where you're going to be in life, right? Are you trying to elevate yourself, right? You can look at your friends around you, and are those friends will really dictate the future of where you're headed, right? It's very simple, actually. So that's really the first step. And then as we move on past that, we move into what we like to call the infrastructure phase, where you're setting up the infrastructure. And so let's talk about infrastructure for a sec, right? So it's all great to chase a real estate deal or look at, the potential return. This one has this type of IRR, this type of ROI, but why don't we look at tax strategy first, right? Because taxes are actually your number one biggest expense you have in life, bar none. So how can you set up a proactive tax strategy that is really going to perpetually, reduce your taxes so that you can have more money to invest and more to do with it? And if you have a strategy, you can actually align yourself, to doing that. I know a lot of the big real estate entrepreneurs out there, are able to achieve a tax rate of 0. Right? And how do they do it? They have a comprehensive tax strategy. And this isn't just your average CPA who's filing your taxes. You're working with a strategic tax planner, ongoingly throughout the year. So tax strategy is a key piece. We also, another thing we do at Pantheon is help investors set up infinite banking strategy, right? Which we believe is really, it's one of the cornerstones to what family offices provide for people to, protect and grow their wealth. And it's an amazing strategy where you're able to actually, put money aside and actually have it grow tax-free, compounding tax-free. You can pass it to your heirs tax-free. You can set up a tax-free income stream at retirement that just comes with you. and you'll never outlive it, by the way. And then the other really cool thing about this is that you're able to actually borrow against the policy, right? So a lot of folks, I'm sure on the podcast, are, real estate investors. Well, where do you put that money that's coming in from the cash flow that's, streaming in off of your various investments? This is a great place to take that income and park it, right, as a store of value, park it in there, and then you can add more velocity to it until you get your next tranche, you get your next 50K to invest or whatever that might be, and then you're able to go invest it somewhere else. Or should you have an emergency or you want to pay for your kids' college, that's a great, really great place to be. So we kind of help folks set that up. And then, of course, estate planning and protection is absolutely key as well. So you protect yourself, all the way. And, Chad, I think it's really interesting, right? We talked about a little bit earlier in the fact that we learn in life, right, through academics and school and all of this stuff, right? We all learn how to make money, or we learn some kind of experience or trade or skill set on how to make money, but nowhere is it taught how to protect and grow your money, right? So we're trying to be in the business of helping people develop a strategy to kind of, protect and grow your money. I'll pause here. There's 2 more steps in the strategy, but I'll pause for a sec here and make sure that makes sense.
Dave, this is probably the quietest I've ever been on an episode, and I'm loving it. I'm just letting you go because exactly everything you've just mentioned, it's not just about finding the right investment, right? That is one piece of it. But folks, what Dave is alluding to, and it sounds like you can get a lot of these details in Dave's book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy, you really have to set up a system. You have to almost behave like your family is your own family office, right? And if you don't know what a family office is, go listen to the episode just before this, because I just had a gentleman on here named Clay Helper talking about, what family offices are and how you can emulate that with your wealth strategy. He mentions infinite banking, right? That is a whole concept in itself. He mentions real estate investing. That's a whole concept in itself. He mentions asset planning. That's a whole concept in itself. Every one of these things requires you to raise your IQ and get educated, but you don't have to do it all yourself, right? There are experts out there who can be on your team and help you build this system that is going to allow you to give your dollars every possible job that they can while they're working for you, and multiply them at a safe and substantial rate, and also protect them when creditors or lawsuits or things like that come after you. And then what's the biggest question there? Estate planning, passing it on to your heirs, guys. I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm going back on mute. I want to hear step 3 and beyond. So let's pass it back over to Dave here.
Yeah, sounds good. So the third step, we call it asset repositioning. And it's interesting. You probably have the same conversations, Chad, right? Where, a lot of people might, you might talk about a multifamily opportunity, for instance, and it looks great, but people say, look, I don't really have that kind of free cash flow sitting around, and, I'd like to invest, but I can't, right? Well, where do the majority of Americans keep their income, right? It's sitting in 401k plans, or it's sitting in trapped equity in your primary house. And I don't know about you, but the rate of return on equity in your house is what? It's 0, right? So it's not earning you anything. So, I'm sure most people have already done cash out refis, right? With, in this point in the cycle where interest rates are so low, but an excellent strategy to actually reposition some of that capital within your house, or potentially within a rental property you might have, right? And you'll notice that the IRR goes up within that investment property, the more leverage that you have on it. And then you can pull that leverage and then go invest in the deal, right? Because if you can be making double-digit returns over here, why would you be getting 0 return, right, coming out of your house? And another thing to think about, and again, this is why we like to call this like really a holistic strategy, is, think about, most Americans have money parked in a 401k from some job or another. Well, if you have money in qualified plans, the government and Wall Street have you try to think that deferring taxes is really a good thing. And why? Because they make the assumption that your tax bracket is going to be lower when you retire. But I can tell you the only thing I'm quite sure of is that taxes will be higher when you retire, right? So why would you want to be paying ordinary income tax rates on that income, at a point in your life where you don't really have any other options, right? So if you can reposition some of that 401k or qualified money, right, into, say, tax preferred vehicles, right, that is going to be, really set you up in the future. I went through a process where I paid the 10% penalty. I sold all of my qualified plans, paid the penalty, put it into some opportunities in multifamily. I broke even in only a few years, and now it's really infinite returns kind of beyond that. So I think, when you really look at this concept of asset repositioning, it's looking at your entire portfolio. And again, not from a Wall Street perspective where we're saying, oh, well, we're just mixing, bonds and equities and what's your risk tolerance, right? We're looking at, holistically, how is this going to support you from your tax strategy going forward in the future? How are you going to create alternative cash flow streams, right, to reduce your risk and things? So that asset repositioning is really key.
That is such a huge, I'm listening to you kind of regurgitate my early wealth experience, right? So success leaves clues, folks. And, look at Dave, look at me, look at anyone else who you follow in this industry. Many of us are probably practicing a lot of what Dave has so eloquently put into a book for you, right? In this way. I mean, when I burned the boat and got out of corporate America, I liquidated, retirement accounts. I tapped into equity on my home that I had an abundance of because of the wonderful expansion market we were in, and renovations and such, and then leveraged that money, put it into something else that was earning double-digit returns, and I was paying 2%. I mean, it's like, come on, you can't, it's almost free money. And I want to amend one thing you said there. Your home, if you're not using the equity, it's not a 0% return, it's a negative return because your home costs you every single month, right? That is the one piece of property that does not make you money unless you use the equity, because unless you're charging somebody rent to live there, right? In a house hacking situation, you're paying the property taxes, you're paying the upkeep, all that. So that's actually a negative interest rate or negative return if you think about it that way. So yes, what he's saying is put all your cards on the table, shuffle them around. You may have more money than you think, and if you don't believe me, go listen to Man of Class podcast. I think it was episode, it was something about debunking myths of your liquidity, right? Where I talk about my exact experience with this. And I'm loving that Dave has actually put this into a book for you. So keep going, brother. Keep going.
Yeah. All right, great. So the last step in the strategy is really to achieve massive passive income, right? And how we focus on this is really by looking at, different types of operators who are best in class, right? Like folks like Quattro Capital. We look at different markets, right? Where you can have some diversification through, different markets, also different asset types. So maybe a class A, a class B, a class C, different things like that. But essentially, we're looking at passive income through the lens of, a few different factors, right? We love to see investments that have like really a multiple, really exponential type of results to them. We're not looking for just one, rate of return, right? So we're looking at something that has great cash flow. And then let's say, what's the depreciation, right? We actually have a Bitcoin mining fund where you can do 90% depreciation in year one, right? That actually it depreciates all of your investment, right? That 90% of it in year one right away. So if you've had some type of liquidity event or something like that, then some of these other investments could be good for you. We're also looking at that cash flow, right? Building up multiple different, cash flow streams across asset classes. So you have further, insulation, right? If let's say one property wasn't doing well through COVID or something like that, or maybe it's actually like a development, right? It doesn't necessarily have cash flow, but you're looking for a higher equity on the back end, right? So you can kind of balance that, right, with some of these other things in the portfolio. But again, we're trying to look at these things through a lens of having, multiple benefits to you, not just one, not just the cash on cash return. We want to understand, what are the tax benefits? Are we doing bonus depreciation and cost seg on these types of opportunities? How does that map as well into, your year? For instance, maybe you're having a year where you're transitioning jobs and you have a lower amount of income, right? Great year to actually maybe take, some income if you're repositioning money or something like that, right? And how you want to plan that into, what you're buying. I was running a tech consulting company for 13 years, and we actually had an exit. So I've been looking at, how do I offset, right, the income through that by putting it in some of these assets that are much more tax efficient, right? So again, kind of looking at that more of a broad holistic picture on how to build massive passive income. And as folks who are further down the journey, will know this, this really snowballs. Right. And when you put all of these pieces together that we've been talking about here, right, just think about it. We say like, okay, that deal might be great because it's got a 16% IRR, right? But if you start moving, you reposition all of your assets, you start increasing your IRR, let's say you added just conservatively a 10% reduction in your taxes, per year, like what that would do to your whole portfolio growth. And then if you threw into it the velocity of the infinite banking, and then you knew that you had all of this protection, right? You had you're building a fortress around you as you really grow this wealth. You're really going to start to see some exponential results, which gets exciting.
I think I'm going to let Dave have the mic drop moment on this show right here. And to quote my friend Holly Williams over at keepmore.com, right? This is not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you keep, right? Making money and growing it and having it grow while you are not touching it is a very key portion of this. But then as Dave just put it, how much are you actually keeping? Just a small reduction in your tax burden, which investing in a lot of these assets, you can make massive reductions in your tax liability, can just amplify how much you have available to invest and reinvest. And then things just become infinite at that point. So, wow, I'm going to have to stop there today, Dave. That was a fantastic, run on the holistic wealth strategy. Now we've got to get into the Quattro lightning round. Okay. 4 questions just for you. First one, what do you view as your superpower in this business?
So it's really my unique ability. It's really creating trusting and meaningful relationships. And, we call that unique ability. I'm in the strategic coach program, which talks about unique ability and really honing in on what you do really well. So that's really key. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you for that. And now we got to ask this question. What's your biggest failure, Dave? What did you learn from it?
So one of my biggest failures was when I had started my tech business. We were 5 years in, double, triple digit growth every year. And then in 1 year, we found ourselves completely upside down. We had actually kind of, I guess, over leveraged a little bit. Some customers didn't line up exactly like we thought. Some investments didn't line up, and all of these kind of came to a head like right at one point. So I really learned, this whole concept of, not having all your eggs in one basket. And as an entrepreneur, it's very easy to, go 100% into your business. But had I been investing really strong at that point, like we talk about here with alternative income streams, to be fully protected, and have that type of strategy. That was my biggest learning. So it really hit home.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And you learn the most when times are hard, right? So looks like you've rebuilt a few times over. So congrats on that, Dave.
Yeah.
Next question. We've been talking about this book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy, through the entire episode. It seems like we're going to get a free link to that thing here in the audio here. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Chad. So you can go and download a free copy just at our website. It's pantheoninvest.com/wealth-strategy. And if you sign up there, you get a free copy. So.
And folks, as always, that will be in the show notes. Just scroll right on down and click. No worries trying to write that. Last question, Dave, and then we'll let you get back to your busy and awesome day. Quattro is a big proponent of philanthropy, right? We would love to invite you to mention or promote any philanthropic venture that you're involved with, so that perhaps our listeners, if they feel so compelled, will either reach out to you and join you or support on your behalf.
Thanks for that. As I mentioned, I was in the Marine Corps, so I have a strong affinity for veterans and trying to support the veteran community. And I'll be having actually announcements very soon, probably this quarter, about joining a board that supports veterans on multiple fronts. I'm really excited about that. So stay tuned for that actual announcement once that goes through. But love to support veterans.
Fantastic. Dave, thank you so much for coming on and representing Pantheon Investments on the show today. This has been, wow, just a lot of nuggets that I think people can actually take and take action on, right? So go get that book, folks. Give it a read. What have you got to lose? This is going to, if nothing else, raise your investment IQ and your holistic wealth strategy IQ. So thank you for coming on the show, folks. Until next time, this has been another episode of the Real Estate Runway Podcast. Over and out.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway Podcast.